a huge weekend for Auburn recruiting wise. A lot of visitors on campus. And what I want to talk about today is the Hugh Freeze impact and what is going on at Auburn recruiting. Auburn got multiple recruits this weekend on campus and got some commitments. Uh, a really, I guess, eclectic bunch. And what do you mean by that, Deuce? You got multiple guys. You had offensive linemen, you had corners, you had a wide receiver, you had a quarterback, defensive lineman, a little bit of everything. I think you had everything on campus but a linebacker. Um, where Auburn is right now, I think that the allure of playing time is going to be super important. And I think that you're getting guys on campus that can come in and make an impact instantly. And Auburn's roster has a lot of turnover. You got guys going into the portal. I think you got maybe eight or nine guys going to the portal, which is good considering that you got a team like Arkansas that has like 18 guys. Texas A&M may have as many as 20. Auburn has done a good job of recruiting some guys that they know they need to play. And as far as the guys going out, I don't think there are as many impact players. You do lose Tank Bigsby to the NFL, but outside of that, I think you're keeping a lot of the good, and now you're trying to add on to it. Hugh Freeze has had such a big impact, and I think the biggest thing that he has done has been circling the block and finding some guys that the previous staff was evaluating and going ahead and making offers. Like, hey, you want to come to Auburn? We need you, and we're going to find a place for you. And you're seeing this had immediate results. You got a guy like Sylvester Smith, a safety who was committed to Tennessee that flips. You had an offensive lineman, Tyler Johnston, decommits from Texas Tech, comes on over to Auburn. He's now a 4-star on some recruiting sites. So that's another big one. You had two of the top JUCO tackles in the country on campus. I think you get at least one of those two. And I think that understanding the roster and knowing that Auburn cannot afford to be too picky, you got to get guys that want to come to Auburn. You got to get some local guys, which I think Sylvester Smith was huge as far as kind of putting that fence back around Alabama, being competitive for guys in the state of Alabama. It'll help you not just in this class, but next year, the year after next, when you've got guys who are already at Auburn from the state of Alabama. I think you can't. I think it's not a price that you can put on that for making Auburn a destination school. I think that Auburn has always been in a great location. It's always been a place that had a great brand. It's somewhere that you can win a national championship. A lot of teams in the SEC just haven't won national championships. You got Ole Miss and Mississippi State, and I think Tennessee only has one, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe they have. I don't follow them as much as I follow Auburn. Georgia, just as much as Georgia is doing, they could be on their way to their third. But before last year, that was their first national championship since 1980. So being a program where you have the resources, where you can be successful, having a guy who has the personality to go into high schools and make people feel comfortable, I think you can't put you can't put a price on that. And I think that Hugh Freeze is doing a heck of a job. As far as signing day, a lot was said about Auburn actually taking a commitment for Sylvester Smith, and what does that mean for a guy like 4-star safety Terrence Love, who's currently committed, who was on a visit to Georgia Tech this past weekend. And I don't think it has any bearing on that. I think that Terrence Love will end up in the class. I think him and Smith play two different positions. I think Smith is more of a field safety or a free safety, and Love is more so of a guy who can come up in the box. He has the size to play linebacker if he wanted to, but has the speed to be a free safety. So you meet right in that middle at that strong safety, that field size safety. And I think that it does nothing but make the class stronger in the secondary. Ron Roberts, who likes to run a 4-2-5, you got to have guys who can be multiple, who can play both safety spots, who can come down and assist in the run game, who don't have to come off the field regardless of what the set is. So I think that Auburn is going to take a lot of DBs. I think they'll offensive line. I think they're going to take maybe 8 to 9 guys. So you already have a quarterback who been successful, who started a lot of games in Robbie Ashford. I think bringing in competition only makes Auburn stronger. I know that Hugh Freeze has the ability to adjust his offense towards the talent that he has. So if you end up with Robbie Ashford, you're still okay. If you get a guy like Devin Leary, if you get a guy like Grayson McCall, who we're not sure is going to be able to play based on does he have the correct academic requirements, or does Auburn offer what is needed in order for him to become a part of the class, or remains to be seen. I think you'll be fine at quarterback based on what Hugh Freeze can do. But what I really like is the fact that Hugh Freeze is saying we gotta have guys, and not being too picky, but understanding where he is. I think that next year, I think that you see Auburn in it with way more of the top guys in Alabama. I think that the 24 class is another loaded class. And I think as far as in the Atlanta and Alabama, you're going to see Auburn have that impact. Absolutely. And signing day, one thing I do know is that previously a lot was made to be said about, was Auburn going to be competitive with NIL? And absolutely, that's going to be something that's taken away from the negative recruiting previously. Is like, oh well, Auburn doesn't have NIL. Yes, they do. They have it for now. How they divvy it out is different, but I do know they do have a war chest, and I do know that they do have a specific strategy about who gets what going forward based on position. And I think that Auburn's going to be super competitive as far as that goes. The football only facility is state of the art, top of the line, and it does nothing but help Auburn's prospects as far as recruiting. And having a guy who can talk like just a guy at the bar in Hugh Freeze, you cannot put enough of an emphasis on the leadership as far as recruiting, and having a head coach that wants to close himself. And I think that's super important. Hugh Freeze is a closer. He's a guy that wants to get in there. He's going to make the initial conversation. If you need him, he'll call. He's not too hard. He's super humble. The humility is off the charts. He's somebody who's done it before in the SEC. He's somebody who, whether you're a guy, a 5-star guard, a five-star type guy, or a 3-star, he's going to treat you the same way as long as you play ball, as long as you do the things that you're supposed to do. So yeah, 1,000%. I think Hugh Freeze at this point, you're starting to see why he was the guy, why Cohen was hell bent on getting him, and why he had no qualms in there. There wasn't an issue as far as not getting Lane Kiffin, because you got a guy like Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze just fits Auburn. When I think of Auburn and the successful times in Auburn, the successful coaches, they've been able to be nice guys. They've been able to be motivators. They've been able to be innovators. And they've also just been able to be a guy that you felt like belonged in Auburn, a guy who might go take a roll of toilet tissue and throw it himself, a guy who's who will make sure that he knows the words to body getter. And I get all of that vibe from Hugh Freeze. He actually has a daughter who recently graduated. You saw the guys making, I think Will Herring had a really, really good vote of confidence for Hugh Freeze before he got the job, and I haven't seen anything different from that. So kudos to Auburn for making a good hire. You're starting to see the returns early, and I think that as long as Auburn continues to support their student athletes, to be active on social media in a positive way, you see Hugh Freeze interacting on social media, and a lot has been made about some of the tweets that he makes, and should he say that? But how long do you allow a man's past to dictate who he is today? If you've been a perfect person your whole life, then I would gladly appoint you Auburn's head coach, regardless if you have experience or not. Because if you're a perfect person, that you've got to be Jesus Christ himself, because that's the only person who's been perfect to walk this earth. So, man, shout out to him for at least, knocking the detractors down, believing in his transformation, or just believing in not even the transformation, but believing in the human process. The human process allows us to get better. Things that when I went into the third grade, I didn't know how to multiply. When I left the third grade, I knew how to multiply. Just because I didn't know how to multiply before I learned, doesn't mean I don't know. I don't know that now. Humans have the ability to learn. Humans have the ability to change. Humans, the human element of who we are as humans, allows us to be able to grow and mature and be different. And I think the sooner that people start to allow the past transgressions of Hugh Freeze to be the past, I think the sooner that the Auburn family can unite, and the sooner that Auburn can move on one accord into becoming the premier program in the SEC, or one of the premier programs in the SEC, as it always has been. It's always been Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, the top teams in the SEC. Auburn has always been right there on that echelon. They've one of the few teams who, LSU included, one of the few teams that's won a national championship in the past 20 years. So, and you got to think about it. There are 125 teams, I think, in the FBS. And I think maybe in the past 20 years, maybe 10 or 9, maybe even 8 teams have actually won a national championship. Auburn being one of those, it says a lot, and really should have had 2 if you count the 2004 season. So kudos to Auburn staff and the powers that be, and John Cohen, the president, Roberts, and most importantly, the fan base, for allowing Hugh Freeze to come in, be himself, supporting him publicly, and allowing him to get out here and get you some guys who want to come to Auburn men that want to be there, want to make an impact. And I think those are the type of guys that you'll be able to get a lot more out of. I was talking to Jason Caldwell, one of my colleagues from Auburn 24/7, and he made the point that you want guys that want to be at Auburn, because those are the guys that are going to go the extra mile. Those are the guys who aren't going to feel like you owe them something for being at Auburn, or that, hey, I'm doing you a favor, I could have went anywhere else. The guys that want to be at Auburn are the guys that you kind of want to focus on, the commitment, the commits that are there. You don't just go find another guy and say, okay, you're not a commit anymore. No, the guys that want to be in Auburn, for the most part, if they line up to what you want to do schematically, those are the guys that you got to make sure have a home in Auburn, and one of the reasons that I think Auburn will be successful going forward.